Good morning, everyone. Today's video is going to be a homework assignment walkthrough. With that, I already have most of the files up here already that we'll need for today. The assignment itself goes through what we need to download. So this is again for Little Rock, the boundaries, 311, and crime data. I recommended limiting this to 2022 within the data portal, just using their filters on there. So selecting dates between January 1 at midnight to December 31st at 11:59 p.m. Smaller files to work with, especially with the 311. Also had students download the Unsafe Vacant structures, comes in a shapefile on the website. And then I also had on Blackboard, Little Rock school zones that have elementary, middle, and high school blocks that you can then look at larger school zones from. With that, this assignment is primarily doing a selection by location and some attributes and combining them in a couple different places. Exporting new layers, all of that to try to remind students some of the old skills that they learned, be it Excel or earlier with ArcPRO. With that, you can kind of see the first 5 questions here. And then the second part is to create a final map, specifically on Stevens Elementary Zone. So I'll do a little bit of this, but not the full final map because my map's going to be different than anyone else's. But with that, the first question we have here is how many robberies occurred in 2022? I'm going to pull this to the side. When I brought in my crime data here, it was in table format. So with that, if you remember, whenever you bring in crime data from a CSV perspective, this already had the latitude and longitude in it. So if I scroll to the right, it has the coordinates in it for me. So all I did was right click, display XY data, and now I have my crime up here. And I did the same thing with the 311 data. So I took it from a table form and displayed it as point level data. So if I were to turn this on, you can see the crime that was from the LRPD portal. You can see some up in North Little Rock even. With that, I'm interested in how many robberies there were for calendar year 2022. So to do that, I'm going to open the attribute table and start off. This is just a select by attribute here. So I want my offense description, the column that has my offense type in it. And not shockingly, I was already messing with this earlier. It's already set to robbery. So if I needed to start over, I want to make sure my where is offense description is equal to, and then the specific offense type, and ArcPRO will generate the values in here, the different responses for us. And I'm interested in robbery here. So with that, I'm going to hit apply. You can see down here, I have 428 selected out of the 14,000. So with that, I know my first answer is 428. So I'm just going to hop back in my Word document. We have 428 for that one. The second question is asking how many streetlights out calls, so the 311 data, are there within a quarter mile of an unsafe or vacant property? So here we're going to have a couple different selections. We need to select by attribute our 311 data for our streetlights out. And then we also need to use those streetlight out calls to see how many are within a quarter mile of unsafe or vacant properties. So again, I'm going to start in the 311 file. I'm going to open this. You can see we have just over 100,000 for calendar year of 2022. With that, we have issue type and a subcategory type, which subcategory type is what we're going to use for this one. I'm already familiar with it, so I know this. And I'll show you the issue types just to see that it's not going to show the streetlight out one that we need. So to do that, another select by attribute. And if I did the issue type, you can see here that I don't have streetlights out. I have just streetlights. Ideally, this one's going to be very similar in nature to what we're looking at, but it's the subtype that we're interested in. It's still equal to here, and we're just going to scroll down streetlights out. Hit apply, and we see we have 2,557 streetlight out calls, 311 reports for the entire calendar year of 2022. With this, we now want to know how many of these are within a quarter mile of an unsafe vacant property. So with that, I'm going to save this out as a separate layer of just streetlights out for 2022. So I'm going to right click on my 311 calls, the layer that I just selected these from, data, export, and I'm going to just rename this and save it into my geo database. And I'm going to call this streetlights out CY for calendar year 2022. Hit enter, hit OK. And now I'm going to have a subset of data. I'm going to hit clear, turn that layer off, of a smaller subset of 2,557 311 requests that are primarily just streetlight outs requests or reports. With that, I'm interested in how many of these are within a quarter mile of our unsafe vacant property list here as well. So with that, we've done select by attributes. At this point, we want to do a select by location. We want to select, and this one already defaulted to have our streetlights out here, but if it didn't for you, just make sure you have that one in there. And we want to say, what's the relationship? We want to say it's within a distance. So it's within a distance of, and that's our unsafe and vacant properties. And here we want to specify that we're working in miles, and it was asking for a quarter. So I'm going to put 0.25 here. Hit apply, and we see that within a quarter mile of unsafe vacant properties, we have 998 streetlight out reports for calendar year 2021 or 2022. With that, the next question then asks how many pothole repair calls are there within a half mile of these same unsafe vacant properties. So again, I'm going to do a similar select by attribute, then export that out. And this is more so to get in the habit of creating new layers to reflect subsets of your data. So I can turn off my streetlights out, open up my 311, and this time I want to select out based on pothole repair. So with that, I'm going to come back into select by attribute, and you don't have to open the attribute table every time. You can click up here and specify from what file you want to select from. It's out of habit for me just so I can see it within the attribute table itself. This time I'm changing my subcategory to pothole repair. I'm assuming it's this, there we go, pothole repair. Hit apply, and we just have 1,200 of those. So if I were to turn this layer on, you can see that those are the highlight blue. So those are the ones I'm selecting out. And I'm gonna save this one again as a separate layer. I'm gonna save it to the geodatabase again, and this is pothole repair calendar year 2022. Click OK. Hit clear so I no longer have a selection. There we are. And turn off that 311 as a whole. And now I have a subset of data where I can select a similar select by location and see how many we have here. So select by location, pothole repair that are within a distance of our unsafe and vacant properties. Change this distance part to miles. And this is asking for a half mile. 0.5, and if you're ever wondering, it's 5,280 feet in a mile, so you can always use feet as well. And here I have the wrong table open. So we have 481, which matches our value here that it shows us how many were selected. So we have the first three questions down. The next one, D, is how many unsafe vacant structures are there within the Stevens Elementary Zone? So we're working with a couple different layers, and we're gonna have to select out from here. So I'm gonna clear, I'm gonna turn off our pothole repair, because now we're interested in our unsafe vacant properties and our school blocks. I'm gonna open this attribute table to show you what it looks like. With that, it has the elementary, middle, and high school. Essentially, each one of these blocks has the feeder school from prior one. So which elementary goes to which middle school, then high school. So it's pretty handy that way. Love how they set this up, super useful. But for our purposes, we need Stevens Elementary. With that, we're gonna select by attribute. And this time we're gonna do select where elementary school is. This is still defaults to equal to. I'm going to use Stevens here. Hit apply, and you can see Stevens Elementary Zone here. I'm going to export this and save it as a separate polygon layer. So I have a new boundary just specifically for Stevens Elementary. With that, right click, data, export. Still gonna save this to my geodatabase. This time it's Stevens Zone. Hit OK. And we're gonna have this exported out. Hit clear here. Turn off the rest of them, and you can see if I zoom in, we have Stevens Elementary Zone here. We'll get into, and it'll honestly probably be this week in the GIS class, on how to dissolve some of these boundaries. Some of you learned this past weekend, Tuesday. So we can get rid of these boundaries. I'll show that in another video. If you're familiar with GIS, it's a simple dissolve, so it makes one polygon versus this one has 43 in it. But with that, we're now interested in how many unsafe or vacant properties are within this specific school zone. This is an elementary school, and if you're familiar, this is I-630, a big dividing point within the city of Little Rock. So with that, we're doing another select by location. This time we want to select our unsafe and vacant properties that are within We don't have to do a distance, just are within. Some people use intersect here, our Stevens zone. So I don't need a distance. I don't need anything else. It's truly that are within. Hit apply, and you can see the ones on here highlighted in blue are the ones we're interested in. It gives us a countdown here, so we see the 111, or if you were to open the attribute table, we see that same 111. If you wanted to see those, remember you can click over here to show selected records, and it shows a subset of those and the details on that. So now I have the first 4 questions answered. I have the robberies, how many streetlights, how many pothole, and how many unsafe vacant structures within Stevens Elementary Zone. The last question for this is asking how many, in list of each, ag assaults, homicides, and robberies in 2022 occurred within Stevens Elementary Zone. So it's wanting 3 different crimes. I'm just going to type these out as responses. So we have ag assault, homicide, and this is off the screen. I'll show it at the end so you can see what I'm talking about when we go through all these. But now we have the 3. We have our Stevens Elementary Zone. So now we can do a couple different select by locations. I'm going to clear this again. This time I'm back interested in our crime data within Stevens Elementary Zone. So I know I have all the crime in the city, but now I'm interested in how many, and specifically some of our violence incidents, are within Stevens Elementary Zone. So to do that, you can do it a couple different ways. I'm going to make 3 separate crime layers. I'm going to make an ag assault for the entire city, homicide for the entire city, and robbery. With this, if you're outside of this class and interested, you can use then by doing it this way, location quotient. So anything over 1 shows disproportionality or of crime concentration in a certain area compared to the city as a whole. Recommend it. Very easy calculation. I'll do other videos on that in the future. But for now, I'm interested in making 3 separate crime layers. So with that, I'm going to do a select by attribute, and this time I want offense description. This one's robbery, so I'm going to click apply again. We get that same 428. With that, I'm going to just export this one as robbery 2022. Oops. Save that, let it run. It's going to kick it over there for me, so we're good. Going to clear, and now I'm going to change robbery to homicide, or this one's murder, non-negligent manslaughter. Hit apply, and we have 79. Not surprisingly, if anyone's familiar with Little Rock, and 2022 is an incredibly violent year as a whole, especially with homicide. Similar, I want to save this one out, so I'm clicking on my crime file, right click, data export, oops. And this one's going to be homicide 2022. Click OK. So now we have robbery and homicide, and I'm left with needing ag assault. So I'm going to clear my selection, go again, and this time it's aggravated assault. Hit apply. We see that there's just under 3,000 citywide. I want to export these out as a separate layer. And now I have ag assault. Oftentimes I spell it as ag ass and then wonder why I name it that way. But ag assault does go around. We have 2022 saved, and we're now good to go. I'm going to clear this out. And now I'm going to turn off the all crime, and we're left with our 3 violent types of crime: ag assault, homicide, and robbery. And we're interested in how many of each one of these occurs within Stevens Elementary. So with that, I'm going to do select by location. And I'm going to actually list all 3 up here. So I have ag assault, I have homicide, and I'm going to also add robbery. And I want to say are within our Stevens Elementary Zone as a whole. I don't care about the distance because we're not doing a search, we're not doing a new selection, we're not doing anything with that. I'm going to hit apply. And you can see out of all the crime that's displaying the 3 that I saved separately, only the ones within the Stevens Elementary Zone are shown. Now you might wonder, well, it's 479. Keep in mind I did 3 different selections, so you can see in here when I hit apply, this is why I like to show it, how many of each. So we have 430 ag assaults, 12 homicides, and 37 robberies. My guess is the location quotient, especially for ag assault and homicide, is going to show disproportionality and a higher concentration in this area compared to the citywide. I'll show that in another video. But for now, again, if you wanted to see what this looked like, you have the 430 here out of the 2970. So you can make a percentage here if you wanted to do that. I'll touch on that in part 2 of the assignment. But for now, I can write these out, and I have 430 ag assaults, 12 homicides, and 37 robberies. So if I pull over the assignment for the top part, question 1, we have 428 robberies in 2022. With that, streetlights out within a quarter mile of unsafe vacant properties, 988. Potholes within a half mile of unsafe vacant property, 41. How many unsafe vacant structures are within Stevens Elementary Zone, 111. And then specific crime types, violent incidents of ag assault, homicide, and robbery within Stevens Elementary Zone. We have 430, 12, and 37 there. With that, the next part of the assignment is asking you to make a specific map. And with that, I'm not going to go over how I would do the individual map. I've kind of gone over that in other videos in class, but I will show you how to go through and do the selection. So it's asking for a final map of Stevens Elementary Zone with any crime involving a handgun, firearm, other firearm, rifle, shotgun displayed within it. And then include a text box of how many were within Stevens Elementary Zone compared to the total gun-related crime across the entire city. Again, what you could use this information for with the overall crime counts for crime location quotient itself. With that, let's get into doing a select by attribute within our crime data again. So I'm going to close this out, hit clear. I don't need the ag assault, homicide, and robbery. I'm interested again now just in crime as a whole. Specifically, I'm interested in gun-related uses here. With the LRPD data that's online, you can see here it does have weapon types. So I'm going to do a multiple select by attribute where it can be different types of firearms themselves. So it's select by attribute, and this time it's going to be weapon type is equal to, and this is where we're selecting out the different types of guns. So it can be a firearm. We're going to add another clause. It's not going to be and here because it's not going to have multiple attributes to it. It's going to be an or clause. Again, weapon type is equal to is the default. Handgun, add another one. That should have been or again. Weapon type is equal to other firearm. Add another or, come into weapon type. Firearm, and now we're into, rifle. And then the last one should be shotgun itself. There we are. So if I hit apply here, you can see out of the 14,505 incidents, just over 1,800 involve some type of gun itself. With that, I'm going to export these as a separate layer. So data export, I'm just going to call those gun-related crimes 2022. Hit OK. Now I have a subset of specifically only gun-related crimes in calendar year of 2022. The assignment then asks how many or what's the percentage of gun-related crimes that occur within Stevens Elementary Zone compared to as a whole. Yes, you should select out only Stevens when you're making your final map, but to find out the percentage, we can do a select by location, and it defaults to gun crimes at the top. Are within, our polygon, our boundary file here, our Stevens Elementary Zone. Hit apply, so we see that we have 260. So if I were to see what this percentage looks like, open up the calculator. And it would be 260 divided by our total here of 1827. It's 14% if you don't see it that way. Just move the decimal place or times it by 100. You can see we have 14% of all gun-related crimes in the city for Little Rock in calendar year of 2022. 14% out of the total occurs here. So we could look at this from a disproportionality. We could see how this relates to crime as a whole and across the entire city. But it's an easy way to get started on this. With that, that's all for assignment 7 here, week 7 assignment. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out. Until next time, bye.